Anyway, I'm Tom Stoner, here to introduce Jake. And just a quick note before that, some of you may have seen the QR codes around for Turning Point USA. They were to be here today, but that's a long story, which I'll not share with you. But anyway, in the Red Barn, we did set up a memorial there for Turning Point USA. So if you have a chance, there's a QR code in there if you want to donate. It's there, and that was our contribution to Turning Point USA this weekend. Okay. How many remember the book Deliberate Dumbing Down America? Okay, a number of you do. How about 1992? 1992, ring any bells of what happened whenever? I didn't look it up. But anyway, that's when Charlotte wrote Deliberate Dumbing Down America. So we had that precursor. If we had followed her instructions, we might not have been here today, or at least under the same circumstances. Anyway, our next speaker worked with Charlotte to bring her work up to date. And so, as was introduced, Jake Klyczek is the author of School World Order, and he's going to talk about that. His focus is on literary scholarship concentrating on the history of global eugenics and Aldous Huxley's dystopic novel, which I'm sure some of you might have read, Brave New World. Anyway, Jake is the author of School World Order, and if you haven't picked up a signed copy of his yet, after his presentation, check him out in the Red Barn, and he can take care of that for you. So please welcome Jake Klyczek.
I'm very bad with microphones, and I got it to squeal once, and I didn't even talk in it yet. So thank you to Tom Stoner for inviting me. Thank you to Maddie and Jim Cornish as well for setting everything up and also inviting me. And thanks to everybody that's come by the booth to have a chat, whether or not you picked up a book. So I do need to have a little bit of a spot here to potentially go through my notes. So I'm here today to commemorate and carry on the life's work of Charlotte Thomson Iserbyt, who wrote the foreword to my book, School World Order, which expands on her research. And this presentation is going to provide an overview of Charlotte's books and articles, particularly those which focus on public-private school choice partnerships between the Department of Education and education technology companies. I'll also expand on her research and bring it up to date by explaining how the Trump administration is currently pushing school choice privatization backed by Koch brothers, state policy network think tanks in order to usher in a new financial or fintech economy in which federal and state governments distribute public education dollars to ed-tech corporations through blockchain digital wallets in order to data mine AI social credit analytics that predetermine students' career pathways in the planned economy of the fourth industrial revolution. Now that sounds like a mouthful, but I'm going to walk you through all of the little pieces of that pie today. So a little background to start off with as far as Charlotte's work. As Tom noted, what she's most known for is the deliberate dumbing down of America, but she has also wrote several other books, including Soviets in the Classroom and Back to Basics, Reform or OBE Skinnerian International Curriculum. So her Soviets in the Classroom largely looked at Soviet and communist indoctrination in the schools. Basically, it was the precursor to what we know as like critical theory and all things woke today. Her Back to Basics largely focused on the ed tech, in particular teaching machines that were developed by B.F. Skinner, who was a behavioral psychologist. And then she looked at how those technologies are being pushed through the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization to set up essentially a global education technocracy. In her deliberate dumbing down of America, she largely focused on the federalization of education through the expansion of the Department of Education, largely focusing on things like community schools, but her updated version of Deliberate Dumbing Down of America is where she dove into and warned about the Trojan horse that is the school choice movement. So a little bit of background about the rest of her career. Before she got into education, She worked in the State Department in Middle Eastern and Soviet affairs, and so that was sort of how she was aware of the Soviet indoctrination in schools. She would later be elected to Camden's local school board, and from there she moved on to the Department of Education, where she was working as a senior policy advisor in the Office of Educational Research and Improvement under Ronald Reagan, and she discovered a major technology initiative called Project BEST, Basic Education Skills Through Technology. So that was a plan to set up public-private partnerships with big tech corporations that would replace academics with workforce training through computerized programmed instruction that utilized operant conditioning algorithms designed to condition students for job placement in a globally planned economy. So basically this was laying the groundwork for all the things that we're seeing rolled out today. She blew the whistle on this project and she was summarily dismissed from her post. It was during her time at the department that she was involved in the President's Task Force on Private Sector Initiatives, and this was where she asked them at a particular board meeting, like, public-private partnerships, like merger of corporate and state power, isn't that corporate fascism? And they said, gee, Charlotte, we didn't really think about it like that. And so that's essentially what the school choice movement is. We could break it down into two arms, so to speak. So the first is the charter schooling industry. These are private companies that are subsidized by public tax dollars. And these are largely ubiquitous now. There's probably not any state in the country that doesn't have a large chain of charter schools. What we're seeing in the current administration is the rise of different school choice funding mechanisms. So these are known as sometimes vouchers, education savings accounts, or tax credits for tuition, sometimes tax credited, quote unquote, scholarships. And what these do is they funnel public tax dollars directly to students, which they can then use those monies either for private schools, could be charter schools, but they can also just buy education technology products for homeschoolers. So the danger here that Charlotte warned about was that the charter schooling, school choice movement at large would basically be the end of elected school boards, because charter schools don't have elected school boards, they have corporate boards. And then it would also be the end of private schooling, meaning religious schooling and also homeschooling, because if you take that federal or state voucher, ESA, or scholarship money, it comes with the government strings attached. So if you are homeschooling in order to get away from all of the woke or the health mandates, then if you take that money, those things are destined to follow you. So just sort of before we get into where we're at in the current space, I thought it'd be useful to lay out that this is not a left-right issue, that sort of the left has pushed charter schooling and school choice just as much as the so-called right. So a few examples would be the charter schools idea. Well, that was coined by Albert Shanker. He was the president of the American Federation of Teachers. He's a Democrat. And he's also a member of the Trilateral Commission. The first federal charter schooling bill was signed into law by Bill Clinton in 1994, and then he also passed the Charter School Expansion Act in 1998. During the Obama years, he hired Arne Duncan as the Secretary of Education, and Arne Duncan was very instrumental in privatizing education in Chicago when he was the CEO of Chicago Public School System. That's why he got the job as Secretary of Education. And when he was there under Obama, there was a lot of contracts that were signed in partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and also the Ford Foundation to fund school choice and charters with hundreds of millions of dollars. On the right wing end of the spectrum, we have Bill Bennett. Bill Bennett was the Secretary of Education. He was under Ronald Reagan, but he was not the secretary when Charlotte was there. It was T.H. Bell. But he did take over the legacy of Project BEST and its spin-off, which was known as Project Slate. He's also instrumental in setting up the first nationwide virtual online charter school known as K-12 Inc., and he's also a member of the American Legislative Exchange Council, which is basically a corporatist think tank that drafts these privatization bills that they then send out to different state legislatures. And one example that's relevant for today is something called the Virtual Public Schools Act, which basically enabled them to set up all these online charter schools. So K-12 Inc. was actually on the school choice subcommittee of ALEC's Education Task Force. So there's a lot of overlap in these different institutions. Another person we could note would be Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush set up the Foundation for Excellence in Education, but he also set up something called the Digital Learning Council, and that's where they created these 10 elements of high-quality digital learning, and those were adopted by ALEC as the premise for the Virtual Public Schools Act. Last on the list would be Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Education during Trump's first administration. She worked with ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council, pledged her secretarial allegiance to them at their headquarters. She's also funded K-12 Inc. She's also funded the Foundation for Excellence in Education. And she also set up the American Federation for Children, which has sponsored multiple ALEC events. So that's sort of a layout of how this school choice movement has gotten traction on both ends of the aisle. Currently where we're at is some of the school choice provisions that were promoted in Project 2025. Now I know that Trump publicly disavowed Project 2025, but the two main provisions in there have been pursued by the administration. So one is education savings accounts, and the other one is tax-credited scholarships that would be facilitated by SGOs, okay? So some of the main authors of Project 2025 are affiliates of several of the state policy network think tanks that are behind Project 2025. So one of them would be ALEC, okay? Another one would be the Heritage Foundation. And if we look at some of the authors, we'll see that some of the authors will look at the particular think tanks they're associated with and how these think tanks are not just pushing school choice corporatization, but also the use of the digital wallets to distribute those monies. So two of the main authors on the Project 2025 education chapter are Lindsay M. Burke and Jonathan Butcher. Both of them work at the Heritage Foundation Center for Education. Butcher in particular has written an article titled Financial Technology and Parental Choice in Education, and in that he promotes the use of two digital wallet companies known as Class Wallet and Benefit Wallet to distribute those funds. Another important one to note would be Max Eden. He's an author of Project 2025's education chapter. He's a member of the American Enterprise Institute, another one of those Coke Spin think tanks, and he also has promoted digital wallets, in particular public-private ESA platform that they said should be, quote, part fintech and part govtech. Others include the Cato Institute. So you have Andrew Gillen, who is also one of the authors there. And Cato has also promoted not just Benefit Wallet, but the use of what are known as stable value crypto coins to basically be the medium of exchange for those. Betsy DeVos is not part of the Project 2025 document, but a man by the name of Robert S. Eitel, who was one of her senior counsel and also the national director of the Alliance for School Choice, which is a subsidiary of her American Federation for Children, is also on that Project 2025 author role. So a lot of the think tanks that that have been setting this up are affiliated with Project 2025. And if you look at the big beautiful bill that was passed in the budget, there are provisions for both education savings accounts and scholarships, both sort of combined under one rider in that bill. So I figured we could look at a few of these digital wallet companies, look at who they're funded by, and then you can kind of get a sense of how this might not be in our best interest. So the first one I can note would be Class Wallet, which we already noted. It's funded by Lazard Inc., a partner of the World Economic Forum. Class Wallet has already been used to distribute the emergency COVID funds for schools, but they've also expanded out to offer services for health and human services, for FEMA, and for early health care grants, also for housing vouchers at HUD. So I'm noting this because what we're seeing in the realm of school choice for distributing public school choice funds, they're going to use the digital wallets to also distribute other public funds, whether they're emergency relief funds or health care funds or housing vouchers, etc. Another company we could look at would be Benefit Wallet. That's formerly a subsidiary of Conduent, which is part of Xerox. Today it's a subsidiary of Health Equity. And if you look at their board of directors, a large cross-section of them have held leadership positions at a bunch of financial services companies such as MasterCard, Bank of America, Citigroup, and PayPal, and Fidelity. Another worth noting would be Odyssey. Odyssey is funded by several venture capital firms, Bling Capital, Tusk Venture Partners, and Andreessen Horowitz. One thing that's interesting to note about this is that the portfolios of these venture capital firms overlap with those of the PayPal Mafia. So Bling Capital, not only does it fund Peter Thiel's Palantir, but Tusk Ventures, this one shares common investments with Peter Thiel's Founders Fund, Peter Thiel being basically the godfather of the PayPal Mafia, and Mark Andreessen, who runs Andreessen Horowitz. He's not a member of the PayPal Mafia, but he was on the board of eBay, which merged with PayPal back in the day. So he's in their circle, and you'll see him pop up as we go through this. So for instance, he also funded the next company, which is called Merit International. All right, this one is not only funded by Andreessen Horowitz, it's also funded by Alumni Ventures, and that again shares common investments with Peter Thiel's Founders Fund. Merit International, it also boasts that it uses a digital identity ecosystem to authenticate the purchases, and this is going to come into play here in a second because I'm going to show you how these digital wallets are setting up the infrastructure through which these learning analytics can be attached to a digital ID and then funneled into a social credit database. It's also worth noting here that Merit International is also funded by Stand Together Ventures Lab. That is the venture capital arm of Stand Together Trust and the Stand Together nonprofit, which is founded by Charles Koch, also a member of the State Policy Network. Another company, Student First Technologies. This one partners with MasterCard. It uses an online platform known as Theodore to quote-unquote empower stakeholders. So that's your World Economic Forum, stakeholder capitalism, public-private partnership, sort of dog whistle there. But they also boast that the Theodore utilizes Quinn IQ AI with human in the loop machine learning. And the last company I'm going to note is one called SAP Ariba. The parent company for that is a World Economic Forum partner. And I should have noted that Peter Thiel himself is a member of the World Economic Forum. So in something like SAP Ariba, this provides financial services to other large companies, and they can do everything from blockchain to AI to ESG monitoring. So for those of you that may not be familiar, ESG, environmental, social, and governance, is basically corporate social credit scoring. All right, so in a company like SAP Ariba, they have the ability to, through their digital wallets, basically have a blockchain digital ID system, AI predictive analytics, and then funneling those through ESG metrics, which is essentially everything you need for social credit scoring. Now, if you recall, Student First Technologies, it has AI, although it doesn't have a digital identity ecosystem. Merit International has the digital identity system, but not the AI system. So what you're seeing is that, right, all these companies need to do is just branch out their services in one direction or the other, and essentially we're going to have a ubiquitous social credit infrastructure set up. So this is going to dovetail with the larger overhaul in the broader economy and the fintech systems that are doing the overhauling. So recently, we just passed the Genius Act, and this is going to authorize the use of stablecoin, crypto coins that are backed by the US dollar. We've also, to sort of buttress that legislation, David Sachs, who is Trump's AI and crypto czar, a member of the PayPal Mafia, we should note, he also issued an executive order to help set up the federal regulatory framework governing the issuance and operation of stablecoins. And then Trump himself has set up a stablecoin company known as World Liberty. So the thing about stablecoins is that they're both trackable and traceable, and they are also programmable. So what this means is that you can program the vouchers monies with the stablecoin so that they can only purchase the allotted education technology products and services. Trackable and traceable means that the AI can basically data mine the feedback loops between the fintech inputs, the vouchers, and the education outcomes. And from those feedback loops, they're going to get their predictive analytics to funnel the students into career pathways that they're sort of forced into. So they're going to predetermine the career of these children. In the meantime, the Trump administration is also setting up his, quote, golden age of artificial intelligence. And again, noteworthy key players are David Sachs, who authored America's AI Action Plan with Michael Kratsios, who is the director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. He was a former principal at Thiel Capital, again, another person in the Thielverse, the PayPal mafia orbit. It's also worth noting here that Palantir, Peter Thiel's AI company, has federal government contracts with the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, IRS, FDA, CDC, NIH, HHS, and also the Department of Government Efficiency. He also had federal contracts during the Obama administration and also during the Biden administration. So again, this is not a partisan thing. This is not a left or right thing. This is a continuity of agenda thing. Palantir also, by the way, is a partner with the World Economic Forum. PayPal is a partner with the World Economic Forum. OpenAI is a partner with the World Economic Forum, and OpenAI has also been tapped not only to run the Stargate AI project to set up the master databases, but it is also partnering with the American Federation for Teachers to train over 100,000 teachers to implement AI in the classroom. It also might be worth noting here that Stargate project, another person that was tapped for the Stargate project is Larry Ellison, who runs Oracle. Oracle has collaborated with the World Economic Forum, but Larry Ellison also provided some of the early funding for K-12 Inc. That's that first virtual online charter school that was set up by Bill Bennett, who took over the mantle of Project Best. Now, not only have these PayPal mafia oligarchs and their venture capital buddies set up the digital wallet infrastructure and are building the AI to data mine the digital wallets, they've also been invested in the education technology products that are needed to data mine the outcomes. So Peter Thiel has funded Newton and Clever. These are adaptive learning courseware. These are basically the digital version of B.F. Skinner's teaching machine. And this is what Charlotte had warned about, that the teaching machine, right, would be the thing that would, through its learning algorithms, put students into their predetermined career pathways. So these things are there to data mine students' cognitive behavioral algorithms, in other words, their thinking algorithms. Another one called Simbo Lab, which has been acquired by Course Hero. It's another adaptive learning product, but Course Hero, which owns it, is funded by David Sachs. You also have biofeedback wearables. So this is in the realm of social emotional learning. So these wearables, they can data mine everything from the students' heart rates to their brain waves. They have galvanic skin response monitors. They also have facial recognition technologies that can infer the students' emotions. And one of those companies is Effectiva, and it partners with Udacity, which is funded by Mark Andreessen. And then OpenAI, which we just noted, this one was founded by Elon Musk, another PayPal mafia member, and they actually provide their AI to Khan Academy through something called Khanmigo, and Elon Musk has also funded Khan Academy. And so in something like OpenAI and Khanmigo, their generative AI tutor, it basically has the capabilities of data mining both the cognitive behavioral thinking algorithms and the social emotional algorithms as well. And so between those two types of thinking and feeling algorithms associated with the purchases, from that we can extrapolate these predictive analytics for social credit. So to kind of put bookends on that, the corporate school choice lobbying efforts of the Koch-funded state policy network behind Project 2025 and the fintech, edtech, and AI machinations of the PayPal mafia venture capitalists behind the Trump administration are converging in the synergistic construction of an emerging social credit economy in which blockchain digital wallets and edtech products are programmed, tracked, and traced by AI to data mine predictive learning analytics that determine students' career pathways in the planned economy of the fourth industrial revolution. Now, the last thing here is supposed to be my solutions, but my notes aren't in the order that I had them in. It should be, I shouldn't need them because those solutions came from my book. So there's 5 of them, There is one that is most germane, and there are two that are related. So the 5 are local control, public control, abolish the behaviorist method of instruction, ban ed-tech data mining, and then the other 2 has to do with pedagogy, and so that means return to the classical method, and that means history, civics, grammar, logic, rhetoric, okay? So since this presentation has largely looked at education infrastructure rather than pedagogy or methodology, the one that's most important is local control, public control. Banning the behaviorist methodology is important because that is implicit in the adaptive learning courseware, and it's in how it data mines. And then banning the data mining is also important because this is how they get the social credit analytics. So these are germane. But the main thing here is, especially for you homeschoolers out there, is to not take that money. So local control, public control means being active in your local school board, even if you are homeschooling, because you're still paying taxes, so you still have the right to go there and voice your opinion. But ultimately, what local control, public control also means is if you're going to do the homeschooling, that means no vouchers, no education savings accounts, no tax credits for tuition, no tax credited scholarships. And in that, hopefully, we can maintain our sovereignty. And so that's my presentation, and I thank you for your time. I will be back in the barn if you'd like to purchase a book or just ask me questions. Thank you.
Jake, thank you very much. How many of you got around to the honey spot in the inside venue? You got your honey? You might have seen something there about the Shepherds of Maine. If you haven't seen that, you might check back to the honey spot and get more information on the Shepherds of Maine. But in that regard, the Shepherds of Maine have sponsored Jake's travel, and I wanted to present him a check for that. Thank you. Jake, thanks.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. If you'd like to check out more of my research, go to my website, schoolworldorder.info, where you can find archives of all my interviews, all my articles, and a bibliography of all my citations. There's also links to all my social media and video platforms, and you can sign up for my email list too, where you will receive notifications whenever I produce a new article, interview, or video. To support my work, become a research member for just $5 a month, and you'll gain access to my WebBrain database, which contains Charlotte Thomson Iserbyt's archive of U.S. Department of Education files and other rare historical documents. The database will be updated with weekly document dumps, and you will be notified whenever I upload a new dossier. Thanks again for watching. Peace.